Episode 300, and today we're talking about some standouts in yesterday's matchup between St. Louis and Winnipeg, game where we saw the game go to double OT. St. Louis, they had the lead and they ended up giving it away. There was a goal from Vlad Mesnikov later on in the third, and then the tying goal came from Cole Perfetti with less than 2 seconds to go. And a game in which St. Louis, it seemed like everything was going in their favor for the most part, and they weren't able to hold on literally to the very last second of the game. I thought for the most part, if you're St. Louis though, and you're coming out of the series, I don't feel like you're as distraught or as mad. Like obviously you're mad that you blew a game in which you basically had clinched the second round for almost you just had 2 seconds and you would have moved on. But I think if you're St. Louis, you have a pretty good core. You have a pretty good core in terms of your offensive group. They're very productive offensively, and they were one of the best teams in the NHL down the final stretch of the season after Four Nations. And then you look at how they played in the playoffs. They took the President's Trophy winning team to 7 games, literally to the very last edge. And I thought they played very well throughout most of the series, and especially the home games in the series were back and forth. And it was nonstop. Obviously, Connor Hellebuck needs to be a little bit better in round two. I think with St. Louis, just how they played was really a reflection of who they are and who they were down the stretch of the season. They played really, really tight, really detailed, and every time each team had a home game in the series, it went back and forth all the time. And each team was able to control play when taking advantage of home ice, and home ice was a major factor in the series. I would say more so than many of the other series in the playoffs so far. I think home ice really determined who was going to win these games more often than not. And like when I was in St. Louis and the series shifted to St. Louis, it was more clear cut that St. Louis was going to win those games, especially with the way Hellebuck was playing there. And then as the series shifted to Winnipeg for the first few games and then back to the final few in the middle of the round, the Jets seemed like they had the favor. I felt like this was a series where you really could have picked either one and you really could have went either way at this point. And Winnipeg, if they want to continue on throughout their playoff run, obviously they need Mark Scheifele and Josh Morrissey healthy, but outside of that, they need to have better goaltending from Hellebuck and net, and I think they need to rely upon him more. Otherwise, they're going to probably get knocked out in the second round by Dallas. And it's going to be an interesting storyline with Dallas and Winnipeg in round two now, especially considering not only is Winnipeg missing one of their best forwards and one of their best D, but also Dallas is right now too. So we don't really know what their team is yet until they're fully healthy on both sides. And Dallas is supposed to get Heiskanen back in this round. They're supposed to get Robertson back as well. But just going back to some of the standouts in this game, I thought a lot of the guys on both sides were very effective. It was a high scoring game and back and forth game. Again, St. Louis had control for a majority of it. They were up 3-1 at one point off the goal from Radek Faksa to put them up 3-1. And then throughout the third period, Winnipeg kind of stagnated off. They were generating a lot more shot volume than St. Louis in the third period. But Winnipeg, they kind of stagnated in terms of how they were generating off the rush, how they were using their transition. And for a bit throughout that third period, they lost their firepower a little bit. And I wasn't sure if they were able to come back from that or not. But they were. And so many guys are very effective. Kyle Connor, it always seems in these big games, these big moments, especially come playoffs, and especially come playoff overtimes, he always seems to rise to the occasion. He looked really good, arguably the best player in the overtime period. Just the way he was creating, he looked like a top player, and he looked like the top guy that he's meant to be with his speed and how he's wheeling around the net and how he's creating chances. He had 3 assists, and he was very noticeable as a playmaker. And when you talk about Kyle Connor, you mostly think of his goal scoring first. I think his playmaking often gets underrated. How he's able to find seams, how he's able to make small area plays, how he's able to maneuver with the puck so quickly and so swiftly, and just does a great job as a playmaker, being able to find those spaces and being able to precisely get pucks through those spaces. So he was really noticeable. I really liked his game. And one of the pairings, because Winnipeg was down to 5D with Morrissey out throughout this game, and the pairing of Sandberg and Pionk together was just unbelievable for them. They were I believe they played over 40 minutes and probably around 45 minutes of the game. And Pionk especially, just every time he was out there, it looked like he n could never get tired. And he looked constantly fresh. He looked the freshest among all defensemen to me in this game. Just the way he was playing, the way he was active on and off the puck, the way he was closing gaps, the way he was able to time his routes, the way he was able to just manage space and manage the tempo. And Pionk was just all over the ice. He was tacking, he was involved offensively, and he was involved in the overtime goal. And he was just involved in all facets of the game. It's just a testament to his ability to not only maintain that degree of stamina, but also be able to just be engaged throughout the entirety of the game. Same with Dylan Sandberg. Cole Perfetti had two goals. He had two really nice deflections and tips. And I think the best way to beat Jordan Binnington is not when you get a clean shot on net, even with a screen, because he's still gonna be able to track. I think the best way to beat Jordan Binnington is off tips and directions and redirections. And so St. Louis they score or not St. Louis, Winnipeg they scored. I'm trying to think. I think three of their goals were deflected in this game, and two of which were Perfetti's, because he had that power play goal, that power play tally, and then he had the one late in the game, and or no, that would have been I believe two. It is either two or three of their goals that were deflections. I don't remember how many to be exact. It's fading away from me right now, but. Perfetti had two of those goals, two deflections. The last one was noticeable because he tipped it from the slot and he did a great job of angling his body into the puck to be able to tip it. And then he was just able to deflect it home into the net, which was a really nice play. And he was by far one of their X factors in this game. Two goals was really noticeable off the puck in his movement, and of course on the puck at being able to generate shots and generate volume and stuff like that. I thought Nick Ehlers was great, and he looked great throughout this game. One of the best players for them, and they needed him to be able to be involved in all the time offensively. And obviously, he showcases his speed, his transition abilities, the rush play, the stuff like that. I think he's largely effective there. And Ehlers is also just very effective being able to make plays on and off the puck, being able to move, being able to sprint to space, being able to close gaps in the ozone, being able to make quick passes and stuff like that. And he made a really nice pass over to Kyle Connor on the weak side, who then passed it to Cole Perfetti in the slot. That ended up being the redirected shot into the net and the goal that would tie the game late for Winnipeg. And he was just great, all around great. Same with Vlad Namestnikov and Adam Lowry. I thought two guys who were really all around effective, defensively, offensively, transition, work in the corners, work in the boards, work in the walls, and working to get pucks loose there. And they were both very effective and they were creating a lot of chances. Dylan Sandberg, who I really liked in terms of his gaps, his movement, his angles. I thought he was really solidified in terms of how he was playing offensively and even defensively. I noticed him because usually he's more of a shutdown defenseman. I actually noticed him more on the offensive side and the transition side of this game. Obviously, a defenseman who likes to move pucks north as quickly as he can, and that's more of his style. He's more of a north style defenseman, not a flashy defenseman, not I wouldn't necessarily say he lacks creativity, but you wouldn't when you watch him, you don't see a ton of flash or a ton of creativity pop in his game, is what I'm trying to say. And I think Sandberg's a guy who he brings that edge too. He brings that physical edge, and that's really a really nice balance between him and Pionk on that pairing. And as for St. Louis, I think Radek Fox was noticeable as more of their depth guys. And which is kind of surprising. Obviously, Jordan Binnington stood out. He just stood on his head for majority of this game. Even though they scored four goals, he was really great and was making a lot of timely saves. He was making a lot of obviously the redirections he had some trouble with, but I think overall he's making some very timely saves and saves that were just well executed in terms of technique and being able to move, being able to track the puck, being able to move side to side and move quick and stuff like that. He was doing a great job and he was very noticeable. I liked Foxa and Matthew Joseph's game, and they're two players that play with speed, more so Joseph, and they play with a bit of skill and they have a bit of puck skills to that. Radek Fox is more of a staple on their fourth line. And I like Matthew Joseph in terms of his ability to change direction, change gears, really up the tempo with his speed, and just be involved offensively. And I think he does a great job of being able to weaponize that on a regular basis and being able to be a guy who can move on and off the puck, but also be able to create chances using his board play and his play off the walls, his ability to transition pucks with pace and be able to get up ice with pace as well. Same with Jordan Kyrou, a guy who plays with a ton of pace and was noticeable in transition. I noticed him here and there. He's kind of spotty throughout this game. He had some chances where it looked like he was just going to take control of the game, but didn't really do that fully. And you would have liked to see a little bit more out of him. And I really like Robert Thomas's game. I think there were a lot of times, and they mentioned it on the broadcast, where he's deferring to his teammates a lot of the time, and especially come the overtime period where he's looking to make plays, looking to make cross-seam passes and stuff like that. And sometimes there are chances to take shots that he wouldn't necessarily do. And I don't know if it was a mental thing or timing thing or what it was, but I think you would have liked to see him shoot the puck a little bit more throughout this game and try to create more chances that way. But his playmaking was noticeable. I thought he was making some okay time decisions with the puck and sometimes misfired passes a little bit here and there, but overall was effective and effective at both ends of the ice as well.